Greetings, everyone. I'm still on the cough drop, still getting over the RSV or whatever it is that's going on. So, forgive me if I sound a little weird. We'll jump into this in about a minute. As always, make sure you smash like and feel free to type a few questions in the chat. I will get to those that I can. Make sure you subscribe to the channel if you're not, helps me out. Make sure you tell your friends about Jacketsonline. That also helps us out more than anything and get new subscribers, new people. Allows us to do more things this year. We've added some women's basketball coverage. Just trying to do what I can here and there, adding stuff to the site each year to make it better. So thanks to everybody for your support. It's greatly appreciated. I'll go ahead and start diving into questions, and I'm sure people will fill up as it goes along. So the first question is, what is going to happen with the defense next year? Obviously, we need new players, coaches, or both. The defensive issues are the same inherent ones that I warned you about at the beginning of the year. They have issues at linebacker. They have issues with getting traditional pass rush up front, mainly, large part due to Sylvain Yonaghin's injury, which kind of gutted that whole side of the line until more recently. Eddie Kelly is still not a dynamic pass rusher at this point in his career. He is basically a redshirt freshman who played last year as a true freshman at USF. So, they have some major issues on the defensive line. They show themselves every week. I'm very curious about how this all unfolds. But my gut feeling is that Kevin Shearer will give an opportunity to potentially keep the job, but I don't know that that's what Brent's going to do. I haven't had any real discussions with anyone about it. I think this is an audition for him right now, so we'll see how he does in the final 2 games, hopefully final 3 games for them. So with that said, they definitely need to hit the portal in some areas. They need some help at linebacker, need to develop the guys they have there as well. Get healthy in the secondary, that would help develop a little bit more there. And obviously, Marco Coleman's got to find some pass rushers, and whether that's in the portal, finding another Keon White type guy, or finding and developing guys, or having a healthy Sylvain and having an older Eddie Kelly and an older Kyle Kennard and those guys that should pay dividends down the line. Those guys are starting to show flashes at times, but need more consistency. Seems fair to say that the Cuse game is the biggest game of the program in 5 years, maybe longer. How important do you think King playing the entire 60 and scoring a couple TDs after the 4 interceptions is for the psyche of the offense after a poor day? Yeah, the team goes as Haynes King goes, and it's sort of been that way this year. And this is very much a yin-yang. Defense plays well when the offense plays well kind of thing, and it's been this way for a little bit at Georgia Tech. So, I think if Haynes King plays a good game, I think the defense will step up and play better. Syracuse is missing their best offensive player. They've got their quarterback back, but they basically turned into like an option team last week. So I have no idea what to expect. They've not looked great this year when I've watched them, but Dino Babers is a good coach. He's managed to survive at a very difficult job for a number of years. And they're both playing for bowl eligibility right now. So they both got a lot on the line here. So I'd like to think Georgia Tech at night at home will play. You'll get the A game from those guys, but they got bounced back from this. That was a terrible performance all the way around at Clemson. And Clemson is a difficult team, and that's probably the best defense they faced this year. But it doesn't excuse some of the things like drops and the mental mistakes that were very costly for them at times in that game. Syracuse rushed for 382 yards yesterday. Not a question. Just hoping the staff gets the attention. I guarantee you they're paying attention to the fact that they ran the ball well. That's certainly not going to be missed. Um, um, how much does the ugly showing in Death Valley damage or chances to flip people like uh, David Ezema or whatever his name is? Russell will answer that in the chat. Yeah, it's hard when you lose a head-to-head game against a team you're recruiting, but it depends on how they look at it, right? Um, how much burn are those young guys getting behind Phil Maffa and Will Shipley right now? So it just depends, man. How do we turn the corner in in-state recruiting versus Clemson? Because pointed out yesterday, the guys killing us and those will hurt us later. Our recruits were losing from our backyard. I remember watching Russell and I think Russell may have been there with me watching Barrett Carter as a high school kid at a Georgia Tech camp. Yeah, it's hard, dude. You gotta start keeping some of the top 50 guys in the state. You're not going to get a lot of them, but you gotta get your fair share, and you gotta hit a couple home runs, and that's one of the things that Brent's working on. But it's hard. Everybody recruits this state right now. So yeah, I mean Clemson being good. When Clemson, Florida, and Auburn are good, it really puts the screws on Georgia Tech because those are schools that you can compete against somewhat. And Clemson turning into what they've turned into in the last 10 years has been a real hindrance on Georgia Tech's recruiting in the state of Georgia because it's the most talented state that's easy to access for Clemson outside of maybe the Jacksonville area, which is still not as Georgia's still closer for the most part. So yeah, um, a lot of being on JOL, whether we were closely matched with Clemson and should have performed at their level, fact or fiction. There's no question. Clemson is right now the second most talented team in the ACC. I have no idea why they've played like crap all year, and I've watched them over and over again. Other than them fumbling and turning the ball over, their offenses look disjointed. They've had a lot of issues. They have some issues on the offensive line, but they maybe don't have there's they're missing some of those receivers and things they had. Justin Ross, like those guys, like those level dudes on the outside, they don't have them right now. And so, Bo Collins is pretty good, but they're a better team, in terms of talent than Georgia Tech. Georgia's a better team than Miami is a better team. They managed to beat Miami in terms of a pure talent one-on-one, position 1 through 85, right? And so, I think it's going to be interesting to see how that, changes over time. Can it change? Them moving off schedule, I think, helps too, but it'll be interesting. Yeah, Tech Gold had a good point. He said the coaches at Clemson should be the ones looking at the mirror for their disappointing season. Absolutely. They showed against Notre Dame, they can win. They hired a offensive coordinator, didn't make a ton of sense to me for what they wanted to do. And all of Dabo's problems in the last few years have been his staff and not coaching their guys up. It's not been a talent issue. It's not been missing in recruiting. It's not been any of that stuff. The core of why they were successful was having Deshaun Watson and Trevor Lawrence. And when you take those guys out of the equation, they've been very average without them. Go back and look at the last time Georgia Tech beat them. What happened in that game? Deshaun Watson got hurt on the early in the game, and the backup quarterback looked like he was worse than Zach Gibson was when Zach Gibson came in that Virginia game. It was as bad a backup quarterback performance as I've ever seen in my life. Kid just totally crapped himself. So, yeah, I mean, it's not the team that seems to give Clemson the biggest issue is a Syracuse, a team that's very up tempo. At that time, that version of Syracuse, they're not really even that anymore. But Syracuse would go up tempo and throw the ball around and stretch them, and that wasn't happening yesterday. There were 4 drop passes yesterday. There were other balls that you could have called drops probably, It was just a bad, bad, bad performance all the way around for Georgia Tech, and they gave Clemson an opportunity to put momentum on them, and they put them away. It was disappointing because I feel like if Eric Singleton, and this is not just, he's a true freshman, so you got to understand where that kid is in his career, but like if he hauls in one of those catches that's an easy touchdown, that changes the entire momentum of the game in the first half. And that killed the defense, it killed the offense, it killed Haynes King confidence. He started forcing the ball after that. All of those things probably go away if you get one of those touchdowns. So, does Auburn getting linebacker out of Mississippi change the recruitment of Barber? Russell can jump in on that in the chat. Is there any fallout to Jimbo getting fired that will affect Georgia Tech getting recruits or new guys on the staff? So I will call this right now. I expect Mike Elko to be the next head coach at Texas A&M. I think that's going to go on behind the scenes over the next couple of weeks. I think that's why they fired Jimbo right now, to get out in front, to try to beat out maybe some Big Ten teams that are interested in him or other schools. And yeah, I think losing Mike Elko helps Georgia Tech because it makes Duke have to hit the reset button, which is good for Georgia Tech. Not that they're recruiting against Duke a whole lot, but like every time someone's in a weird position in the league, it helps Georgia Tech. I'll be curious to see. One of the things I'm going to be real interested in is actually what's going on at Virginia Tech now, because Brett Pryce got them a little bit turned around in year 2, and they're starting to have some heat. I wonder if he gets pulled out by somebody, because that's not a great job anymore either. So he could be an interesting name at like a Michigan State or something like that, a guy with a lot of Big Ten experience. So yeah, all of those things are generally a positive, unless they go out. It's not like they're going to go out and hire Deion Sanders at Duke, and he's going to come in and spend like it's Duke basketball. That's not happening. So yeah, I think that's a positive for Georgia Tech. Do we expect coaching and internal staff changes? Yeah, I think there'll be some shifting. I think there's stuff that naturally happens every year these days in college football, but I mean, clearly, I think the defensive staff is. These guys are all, maybe save Marco are coaching for their jobs right now, in my opinion. I don't know what internally, like how else you look at stuff. There'll be some guys I think that leave, but the core of the guys, Aaron Joes, Brent's right hand people, like I don't think they're going anywhere. Outside of a possible bowl opportunity, what gives you hope for Georgia Tech football program? Jesus, Mike, are you like on suicide watch? These are some pretty dire questions. You don't know. I have no idea who the hell is going to be on the team, and the portal changes everything in college football. So this "woe is me" bullshit is like really unnecessary from the fans. Like, why don't you see what the roster looks like, the coaching staff looks like? All those things come January, February, March, like even into the summer. Like there were guys like Paul Maiola that they added late. Like we have no idea what the roster is going to look like. So just like chill, like this team has overperformed a little bit to my expectation. They've underperformed in a couple of games, the Bowling Green game, the Boston College game. Other than that, I think they've overperformed much of the time, especially given what's going on. Will who beat the idiots of the East in my lifetime? I don't know. Georgia's got things on a roll, but, we'll see what happens. I feel like we're going up against UCF and recruiting a lot this cycle. In your opinion, is that a good or bad thing? And what school should we be realistically going up against and winning? UCF tried to be very aggressive in the NIL space, and the rumblings I've heard from sources down there is that is not gone well for them, and there could be a flood of dudes opening things up. And then on top of that, I think Gus is not. I don't think it's a fit there, and I think there's going to be Gus is going to jump if he can get another job. I'll put it that way. So yeah, that could help Georgia Tech. UCF's been pesky. I mean, they've beat when Brent was there. They beat Georgia Tech on a kid. Back then, when Georgia Tech was pretty good, like they've always recruited pretty well. If you've been to Orlando and seen the campus and you're a young man and interested in women, it's a fun place. Like they have a cool environment. They're struggling a little bit in the Big Ten, but or Big 12, but Yeah, I just wonder what their like long-term goal is. They're in a much tougher league now, so we'll see. Tech getting destroyed by Georgia kids at Clemson. Do you think he will pony up and do what he needs to be done to get CJ Jackson back? I don't know. We'll see. From afar, it looks more like it's NIL than anything else with CJ. I would say that that's not an unrealistic opinion of how it looks on the outside. How bad was it yesterday with our recruiting class? Significant, no big deal. I mean, what did you guys think? They were going to go out and beat Clemson? They were a freaking 2-touchdown dog. Like, there's a reason why they have those giant casinos in Las Vegas, and it's not because they don't know what they're doing. Like, I don't understand why everyone suddenly thought that Georgia Tech should be a favorite playing at Clemson in a game that they haven't lost in like 20 years on that military appreciation night when they have all their stuff out. I mean, it is a different. That's a different animal than what Georgia Tech is right now. Georgia, Clemson, they're playing on a different level in terms of talent. Now, Clemson's coached down their talent, just like Georgia did at times with Mark Richt and even early in Kirby's career. So, folks got to like understand where you are in this right now. This is the battle that Brent Key, J Bat, all these people, David Stoudemire, they're trying to fix like years of lack of investment in resources and recruiting and taking care of what needs to be done to be competitive on a level. It ain't going to be fixed in 1 year. It ain't going to be fixed in 6 months. It ain't going to be fixed in 18 months. It's going to take several years of hard work, elbow grease, putting in, trying to fix it. So that's what I'd say. Thanks for the birthday wish from my mom. Is the board inordinately bipolar? It seems like after everyone expects us to win by 20 points. After every loss, they think they lost to Furman and they're about to give up. Yeah, I don't know what that is, man. That's like the side effect of Jeff Collins or something. But there were people like that when Paul was a coach, so would just freak out over stuff. So I don't know. King seemed off today. Yes, a lot of wide receiver drops, but didn't seem to have his reads going at all. Was preemptively determining where the ball goes pre-snap. Do you think that after the first drive in the second half, they should have given him the hook and tried something different? I'd have to go back and remember like the sequences. But yeah, I thought at one point I like leaned over and said to the guy sitting next to me that if it were me, I might try something here to see if he can spark something because he was not playing well. And sometimes guys need to go sit. I've seen a ton of quarterbacks get benched over the years. Even guys like Matt Stafford at Georgia get benched as a freshman. Like sometimes it's not working for whatever reason, and I don't know what was going on. I think the drops definitely messed Haynes up, and then not having a clean pocket. I mean, he had 36 dropbacks maybe or something like that, or like what you would call a passing attempt that wasn't like an intentional run, and he was pressured on a third of them, which is insane. So what do the A&M transfers think of the Jimbo firing? That'd be an interesting question. That's not something I would ask probably on the record to Haynes or Dre or Chase, but I'm sure they're not surprised. They saw what was going on there. That programs have been in absolute disarray for several years. Does Zach Pyron get in the game against Syracuse if King starts throwing interceptions again? I would like to think so. I think you have to. It depends on how the interceptions are, right? Like there was one that he threw that was just literally like he threw a pass to no one that was picked off like on a diving. Like there was no one there, there was no one going there. Like it was just a bad decision all the way around. Like this is where I'm throwing the football. I don't know if it was an option route. I don't know what it was. Maybe Settle figure that out, the couch coach. But like it was as bad of an interception as you'll see, and wasn't under duress. There was room to run for probably about 10 yards in front of him. And those are the things that would make me want to put him on the bench. The ones where maybe somebody makes a great play on a 50-50 ball or like jumps a route or something, I am a little more forgiving on that. I think the X receivers have really struggled at times with their routes and have not done him favors, and that's where you've seen some of the interceptions as well, especially on like those comeback balls and stuff. So I think it just depends on what the interceptions are. Hmm. If you were able to catch King, yeah. Is the backup QB as popular everywhere or just at Georgia Tech? Man, it has been that way forever. I started in 2005 doing this, and whether it was my favorite was a guy named Blake Barnes at Georgia who was just not very good and had like an injury. He was kind of like a running quarterback, and there was like they wanted him to start. There were people that wanted him to start over like Matt Stafford and Joe Cox, who ended up being both pretty successful quarterbacks, particularly Stafford. Like, yeah, it's just how it is, man. There were guys calling for Jordan Llewellyn, who ended up playing tight end, I think, at Cincinnati after he left here. Um, you name it, like, going all the way through. Um, there are people calling for, Vad Lee to be the guy and then JT to be the guy over Vad. Like, it just is a constant thing. So, no, it is not unique to Georgia Tech, but I see it everywhere. Someone asked about Sensabaugh. Maybe Russell can get in on that in the chat. Take a sip of water real quick. Bon Air 41's doing like some crazy posts on the board. How's Arkansas opening going to affect recruiting down the stretch? What's the smoke to fire ratio of the Malzahn rumors? That was what I was hinting at, man. I've heard a lot of scuttlebutt about Gus trying to get the Arkansas job and getting out of UCF. He doesn't have the NIL money. He needs to compete in that league, from what I've gathered. And they have a sort of double-fold problem there. Like, Georgia Tech has a lot of affluent alums. It generates a lot of affluent alums, but it has a lot of older people also that are alums that have disposable income. UCF has a younger graduate alumni base. Sorry, that was the word I was looking for. Alumni base, and so that becomes a problem a little bit. Like if someone were to ask me for money, I'm in my 40s. I've got two young kids. I got two, one that's about to go into high school next year. Like, I'm not giving jack to anything. Like, I'm not in a position to do that. If you're older and my kids, in 20 years, yeah, I'm in a little bit different situation financially, and it wouldn't be for like college sports or something, but whatever, like giving back to something that I believe in financially would be much more feasible at that point than it is right now for me. So I think you run into that a little bit. Why do you think Brent Key continued to play the starters down 42-7? Was it to get them to work through their issues and try to get some confidence going into next week? Yeah, I think that there was no point in pulling those guys out. You make them go out and work, and they did. They kept playing, and that was one thing that I was impressed by, that they kept pushing that and pushing that and pushing. And they got some late points and like did a little something. So I thought that was good. What are some positions they need to close well in high school recruiting? Linebacker, running back, could use some help there. I think they could use some bumps on the D line too. How do we match up against Syracuse? They're a good running team, and I don't know what to take away from that Syracuse Pitt game. I watched them play. God, what was the game where they had the third string quarterback in for Syracuse? It was like a Friday night game because I was in a hotel a couple weeks ago. Hold on. And like they were pretty bad on offense in that game. What the hell game was that? Or maybe it was a Saturday night game. I don't know. I watched them play somebody, and they lost, and it was probably the Boston College game. That was on it was a Friday night game. So that was a week before this, and they looked terrible against Boston College. Look, man, there's very little you can put week to week on how teams play. Look at Florida State and Miami, or like, you know, what's going on at Clemson this season. Like, people, it's just up and down all the time. Georgia's as up and down as anyone in the country right now. They're just good. Like, if you watch them play, some weeks they're disinterested. And like this week, they wanted to beat the crap out of Lane Kiffin. They beat the crap out of Lane Kiffin. Like, or they beat the crap out of Kentucky earlier this year, but then they'll screw around with somebody else and be in like a dogfight with South Carolina. Like, it's just the nature of kids and the way teams are built these years. You're going to see a lot of up and downs. Motivation's problematic. Uh, hmm. Are Singleton's drops something we should be concerned about, or just normal freshman moments? He has not been the same since he got hurt or sick or whatever it was and missed that game. He has been really struggling since then with consistency with his catches. Hasn't quite looked the same. And so I just wonder if I wonder if he hit the freshman wall a little bit. I mean, his hands are, light years better than, say, a Marion Brown. But I just wonder if, like maybe he's hitting the freshman wall a little bit. Let's see, what's he at for the year in drops? He's got four. I mean, he has four drops, but they're all in the last two games. So it just makes me wonder if maybe he's just a little bit, maybe it's a little more mental at this point, or just being beat up physically a little bit. It's wearing him down. Do you think there's a team that can beat UGA? Do you think there is a team that can beat UGA playing their A game? Yeah, I think Alabama will give them a run for their money. I think Alabama has what they struggle with, which is a running quarterback and a pretty good defense. And I think it'll be interesting. Did Kirby sell his soul to the devil? I don't know. That's a question for Kirby Smart to answer. Someone asked about wide receiver commit from Florida that's committed to A&M, Raymond Cottrell. No idea. Russell maybe can answer that in the chat. Seemed like we got pushed around on both lines of scrimmage. I read Elko at Duke put a huge emphasis on strength and conditioning. I know it's our first year with our new strength and conditioning coach, but do you think we're behind in strength and conditioning or just have a talent deficit or both? I mean, there's definitely some work to be done in that department. That was not a strength under the previous staff by the players' own admission and by where the former strength coach ended up. Like, he's at Charlotte with Biff the sideshow Poggi. You're not going to fix that in 6 months. You're not going to fix it in 8 months. And the thing that's really telling with strength and conditioning, I'll add, is like it's a cumulative effect, right? So if you sucked in 2020, 2021, and 2022, you're not building up on the cumulative strength that you would have had from each of those years of strength and conditioning work. So, I think it's something that takes time to fix. Duke under Cutcliffe had a pretty strong strength and conditioning program too. It wasn't like they took a huge step back and then Elko immediately pushed them ahead. They were tough physical teams pre-Mike Elko. So I think it takes some time. I think there's some talent issues. I mean, you're starting a walk-on at left guard who's a very talented guy is now on scholarship. You're starting, a transfer from Princeton at right guard. Like, maybe not like what you want when you're going against former five-star guys and, some of the best defensive linemen in the league at Clemson. Like, that's going to cause you some trouble. The defensive line played okay. They just can't get a pass rush. I didn't see a ton of officiating problems, and officiating had no impact on the outcome of the game. However, there were two calls in the last drive that baffled me. There was a missed face mask call on tackling Haynes. It was obvious from the stands, and they called PI on a pass on the receiver would have needed a helicopter to get to. Did you see those? I haven't watched TV broadcasts in the game yet, and I haven't heard anyone talk about it. A lot of people complained about the first touchdown that Clemson scored with Bo Collins. They said he was juggling the ball. They didn't even review that. I didn't see the face mask you're talking about, but that play was going, I think, the furthest. We were like basically on the 30 on the hill, Howard's Rock side of the stadium. So that play was they were going, I think, to the east end zone. Or no, sorry, west end zone. Maybe that's what that is. So that was away from me. So I don't know. The officiating was not great. There were a couple makeup calls in the game too, but it was better than the Duke Carolina officiating, which was awful last night. Will Georgia Tech ever get a superior strength and conditioning coach? And had one. His name is Eric Ciano. He's in the NFL. He's been forever. We always think the new guy will make a difference. Yeah. You don't know. Like it's, plays like Alabama and Georgia sometimes have to change those guys. Like it is not a strength and conditioning is not a exact science either. Just like NFL drafts or any of these things. I think it's funny that people can't wrap their heads around that when you put together a staff, you're trying to do the best you can with the resources you have available. So, all right, I'm gonna get in the chat questions now. I believe Bryce Gowdy would be a senior right now. Yeah, I guess so. Are they planning to do anything to honor him on senior night? I do not know. This will be the last year he's on the roster. I know that, so I assume that's crossed some people's minds. I'm not sure what the relationship is like there with that family or anything, and so I'm not sure. Kelly, I wanted to let you know that I have you mute on Twitter during the game because you're faster than my YouTube TV. It's a compliment. Yeah, I hear that from people from time to time. There'll be people that mute or unfollow me during the game because the one that gets real tricky is when there's like something that happens during a TV timeout. Like say they go TV timeout to review like a catch on the sideline or a targeting call or whatever. And a lot of times they'll have that out before you find out when you come back from the break. Is Jim Leonard on the radar for someone who could get as DC? I would doubt it. I think he's going to probably try to get a head coaching job this cycle. I could see him ending up at Northwestern. Also, I don't think he's in Georgia Tech's price range. Chase Lane has been limited in snaps since coming back from injury. Is this due to Singleton stepping up, or is he still limited from the injury? Little of column A, little of column B. I mean, he can play. He's not himself still. Like you can see it. He got Malik Rutherford killed in the game. He was blocking a dude and got pushed into Malik on a screen that ended up being like a -4 play. If he gets his block, I don't remember if they had numbers or not, but at least maybe it's not a negative play. Chase is just trying to get out there, man. Like, and you got to give him some credit for trying to go, but he is clearly not himself. He's probably not going to be until maybe a bowl game. But he's trying to go. Like this is it for him. So he's trying to make the most of it. I appreciate that. And well, I guess he's got one more year technically. So, but yeah, he's definitely not 100%. I'll tell you that. And he would tell you that too. Receivers didn't help King. They allowed themselves to get pushed into the sidelines. King basically had to make perfect throws. Hold on a second. They try to make perfect throws. I don't know if tough in this thing or coaching or both. Yeah, the receiver. So the one thing that I was most concerned about with the Georgia Tech receivers going into the season is, and I talked about this on the board, I was concerned about being able to get separation. Eric Singleton gets it through his speed, right, which is one way of doing it. The really great ones like the Demarius Thomas, Calvin Johnsons can use a variety of technique, speed, using their hands, using their body, leaning on guys, all of those things. And that's where they struggle, and they don't have a lot of guys that get separation easily, and it becomes a problem on a lot of routes unless the corner's playing deep and they come back real quick or whatever. Like Dominic Blaylock has had a lot of issues with this, and it's led to I think 2 interceptions this year where he just can't get separated on it's a comeback throw. He doesn't get his separation, and the corner jumps him. He doesn't get positioned right. So yeah, there's a lot of that. There was, and some of you got to be obvious too, man. Like fall down, I don't draw a flag, and all Haynes got to do is chuck the ball out of bounds in their area. Like there's a little bit of acting that's got to go on too from the receivers. You got to have a little savvy with it. And um, the two X guys played very poorly on Saturday, and that definitely had an impact on the game too, along with Singleton's drops. And I mean, it was when I did the PFF, right, like basically the highest rated guys that played a lot were the 2 tight ends and 2 of the 3 tight ends. And like, that's bad. Like with the way this offense is designed, that's a very bad sign because it means guys aren't running the routes, or not blocking properly. And it's kind of a snowball effect on things. Is there any way DJ Durkin comes here? I was just talking to a source about DJ Durkin, but he probably might draw as much as like Brent Key makes. So no. Dirk's, if I were to hazard a guess today, I would bet money that he ends up on Lincoln Riley's staff at USC. I'd love to see Dirk here, though. I think he's a great defensive coach. I think we got way too excited about our offense against mediocre defenses in UVA, UNC. Clemson was much better on D. Yep. That's where it gets interesting in 2 of these last 3 games. They played Clemson, who's really good on defense, and they'll play Georgia, who's really good on defense. Syracuse is not. Syracuse is okay. They're not great. They're about like Georgia Tech. They have some pretty ugly losses on their books against some teams that throw the football well. So you need Haynes King to play well on Saturday if you got a chance to win. It's going to come down. This whole season has been set up to ride on Haynes King's shoulders in a way. Like they don't have a dynamic back that's going to be film alpha and they can ride him for 200 yards in a game. That's not there. So it's going to come down to Haynes making plays and the receivers actually catching the football. It seems like the Syracuse game is either prop up or sink the program for the next 5 years, if not longer. I think that is like a really crazy take. No offense, man. Like, if you don't go bowling this year, it sucks. It kills a little bit of momentum, but like, my goodness, like they're trying to fix like a really like crap situation they inherited. And let's see, what happens. If you're in a position to hire a defensive coordinator, who would it be and why? I might hire Dirk. I like what he's done at different stops with different. The thing I like about Dirk is Dirk figured out how to have like an okay defense at Ole Miss with Lane Kiffin running an insane, like show off my offense that hurt their defense all the time. And that's where Pete Golding's really struggling. And you saw that Georgia game. Like they'll go 3 and out in like 20 seconds, like the speed they play at. I think Dirk does a great job of adjusting to that. I've always been impressed with his defenses. I think he's a sharp guy. Why does Buster love those screens so much? They clearly aren't that successful. You guys bitched and moaned at the beginning of the season when they didn't run them. Like a lot. People are like, where's the screens? Why aren't they running the screens? And then they run them and have some success, and it doesn't work. And then it is very much set up to open up the inside part of the read option RPO game. And the screens are sort of somewhat necessary to cause some of the matchups that you want on the outside. Now, whether they have to run them the same way, you can't run some fakes off them or do some other things, yeah, but they're set up that way. Are they going to look at a punter in the high school portal? The punter was just on the damn Ray Guy Award list. He had kind of a rough day punting against in bad weather, but he was still okay. Like, well, that's a dumb question. What's the one position you think you need a big upgrade in the portal? Linebacker. is why the linebackers made the defense go last year, them and Keon White, and they'll make the DBs look a lot better. That's where those two things are what are sort of the breakdown this year. You don't have a dynamic enough pass rusher on the edge. It's causing guys. Zeke's getting triple teamed sometimes, like inside. Like that wouldn't happen if you had a better edge rusher on one side to go with the smaller guys, the rush ends like the Kennards and the Kevin Harrises. And then the linebacker thing, man, it's just they got to figure out a way to replicate what they've done with Charlie Thomas and Ayinde Ely with some other guys. This is not working with what they have. The run fits are bad at times. They're getting run over at times and either struggling in coverage or struggling in run defense. And so, I think, at times Kyle Eifert and Paul Mel have played well. At times you've seen some other guys flash a little bit, but, the guy they thought would be the guy, Trinellis Tatum, hasn't played particularly well, save for some moments off the bench. Like they just are not talent / developed at that position at all. And they missed on so many guys under Jeff. That's really set them back a long time. Do you have much knowledge about how much we've raised through the competitive drive and Techway initiatives? I don't know anything about the Techway stuff. I actually have a call tomorrow about something related to that I'm trying to give them a little bit of a help with an ad thing with something kind of cool that you guys would enjoy that might be able to allow you to direct some money to some specific players relative to the Techway. But I don't. They're very guarded with that stuff. I get involved if I'm asked to be involved, and that's about as much as I try to stay out of that. Competitive drive last year, they were over their goal. So what that does, and the way that works is that competitive drive thing that covers scholarships. That's a huge piece of their budget. So whenever they get that money, the school's allowed to match it, and so basically you're taking that whatever so if let's say they raise $2.5 million. And then the school matched 2.5. That's $5 million of say $13 million in scholarship money payout every year. Well, that $5 million is now out of your budget, so that's $5 million more that Jay Batt has in his athletic budget. That's essentially how it works. So if people respond to it and do it, it's a huge, huge, huge benefit for them because it frees up so much of their budget that's already tied up. I mean, think about it right now. Their budget's tied up with two of their biggest expenditures are the debt from the stadium and the various projects that Dan Radakovich and other people rolled into that, the almost $30 million, and then scholarships. And these are sort of dead costs that you're stuck with, right? Like they're not salaries, they're not whatever, and everything's getting more expensive every year, right? Like I'm sure their travel's going up. Because everything's just more expensive with inflation and stuff. So they desperately need to create as much breathing room as they can. And so that hopefully will help. And I think it's a cool way that some people I know helped kind of set that up and with, Angel and being creative in ways to get the school to help out financially with Georgia Tech and with Georgia Tech athletics. And I think it's very cool. So if you're able to, that would be good. I think we've already exceeded my expectations for the season. I'm really hoping for a bowl game, though. I agree with you. I said beginning of the year, 4 to 7 wins was sort of my floor to ceiling. They're at 5 with a chance to get to 6 on Saturday. If they get to 6, I will be very pleased with. That's progress, right? Like they're getting off of the 3-game hill that Jeff Collins was dying on every year. But it was a hard schedule too, man. Like, you play in Louisville, who's whatever they are now, top 15 to open the season. You had a chance to beat them. Ole Miss, who was 9th last week before they got smoked by Georgia, lost in a game that was a 1-score game in the fourth quarter. And you have a couple duds and, a couple impressive wins wrapped around them. And people are like, well, this game and that game. Well, if things maybe don't turn out, maybe they win the BG game or the Boston College game because they're more desperate. I don't know. Like you can say if that and the other things, but at the end of the day, they won the game. They went out and executed, made the plays to win the Miami game. Mario Cristobal is an idiot. Like these are things that are all known. He is one of the worst in-game managers. Like so, don't. I think they've had a lot to be excited about. Yes, they have some work to do. Could JOL set up NIL deals with players, or is that not allowed? I would I would need a sponsor to step up and want to like do something. Um, I joked about doing like a QB show or something like on YouTube like this. It would take someone setting it up though. Like I'm not in a position to set that up, and I would feel sketchy about doing it. I don't I don't want money coming directly from my business into Georgia Tech's NIL. I think that's a slippery slope and is sketchy. So I'm fine helping them raise awareness for whatever they're doing, selling things if they need to, or posting about stuff, or um, having it be known. But like, I'm not getting in total bed with that. Like, that's just where I draw the line. What I think the turnout will be for Syracuse, I hope it's decent. I would think it would be a little bit less than maybe the North Carolina game, but better than some of the other home games. Prediction for Georgia Tech UGA. I predict pain for the Yellow Jackets. Probably. Not super excited about that one. I guess it all depends on what the mentality is for Georgia going into that, but I'm not super stoked about the way those teams match up at the moment. Not looking forward to covering that game and haven't some time. So on that chipper note, let's wrap things up. I'm gonna go say goodnight to my toddler and check in on my wife. Look for Q's take probably later tonight on JOL. Thanks to all my sponsors, Auto Owners Insurance, Intellica, Brett Cohey with the Edward Jones Financial. Go check them out if you're up in North Georgia. Appreciate y'all, and make sure you spread the word about JOL. Like, comment, subscribe to our channel, subscribe to Jacketsonline. Peace out.